Are you, like me, a sucker for stabilized footage? If yes, then stay tuned to this video because I am going to talk about this tiny but very, very capable gimbal from Moza. But before we continue, if you're new to the channel, hi, my name is Nico. I create videos about camera gear, audio equipment, and desk setups. I am not a professional videographer or photographer. I used to professionally edit at a podcast company, but all the opinions here in this channel is from a perspective of an everyday tech dad. Now, back to the video. Now again, this is the Aircross S, the newest gimbal from Moza. But just a disclaimer before we proceed, the Aircross S was sent over by Altitude Digital and Moza Philippines, but I do not get to keep this gimbal. It is just sent out for testing purposes. So this is going to be, a completely honest review, and this is not a sponsored video. Now, just a quick story time. Back in December 2019 and January of 2020, I was obsessed with stabilized footage because I am mainly a vlogger when we started this channel, and my camera at that time was a Sony A6400 with a Sigma 16mm f1.4. None of those, the camera or the lens, were stabilized. So when I'm vlogging, it is pretty much shaky. So I searched for the internet, watched videos about gimbals. I started out with a Feiyutech G6, I believe. I'm gonna write it, the model here. But then because of a thick ND filter in front of my Sigma, I wasn't able to balance that setup properly. So I then sold that and bought the Weebill S, which was touted as like the best travel gimbal at that time. So I said, travel gimbal, probably very portable. And then I wasn't able to test it out because 2 months after I bought that, the world shut down because of COVID. Now, when travel slowly started to open up, just for road trips at least here in the Philippines, I brought my Weebill S on road trips. But I ended up just using my camera handheld because I realized it wasn't that easy to set up a gimbal when you're in run-and-gun situations. And when I tried to vlog with it, it wasn't that light. And at that time, I was still using my A6400, but the Weebill S isn't really a small gimbal. Plus, add to the fact that I upgraded to the A7S3. So it is the A7S3, the Tamron 17-28, and the Weebill S. And I'm not that big of a person. I'm 5'6", so it was not a comfortable setup for me. So at that time, I said there is no such thing as a compact gimbal setup, or at least a vlogging gimbal setup for me, for my setup, A7S3 and the Tamron 17-28. That is until I tested out the Aircross S. If you look at the Aircross S, this is as small as smartphone gimbals in the market right now. But as you can see, it is holding my A7S3 right now, and it is perfectly balanced. See, the locks aren't locked. They aren't engaged, but it doesn't tilt over to one side because of not being balanced. So there, I was impressed. But of course, this all depends when you turn on the gimbal. Can it handle it? And boy, did it handle it well. So let me turn on the gimbal. So there you go. The gimbal is now turned on. When you hold it, it feels very, very light. And what's amazing about this is I don't feel any vibrations. I don't feel that the motors of the Aircross S are getting stressed out from the weight, from not being able to handle like big setups. And of course, first thing that you have to do when you turn on the gimbal with your balance setup is go to the power settings and click on auto tune. At least for me, that's what I do. I don't tinker with manual settings of the gimbal. I am not a professional videographer. I use this for my YouTube channel alone. So let me just go through some specs of the Moza Aircross S. The Moza Aircross S has a payload of 1.8 kilograms. The weight of the actual gimbal is 750 grams. It has an 11.1 volt battery, which has a capacity of 1000 milliamperes. Now, according to the website of Moza, the longest runtime of this gimbal is 10 hours. But amazingly, its charging time to get to that full charge is only 1 hour. Yes, 1 hour. Now, since this is a compact gimbal, you could actually also use it with action cameras and smartphones. The supported phone size for this gimbal is 58 to 88 millimeters. And yes, this comes with a phone holder. Now, the Aircross S comes in 5 modes, namely the PF or pan follow, the TF tilt follow, the FPV or first person view, wherein the angle of the gimbal will follow wherever you tilt the handle, lock mode, wherein whatever you do with the handle of the gimbal, your camera will stay in the same place, and inception mode, wherein your camera will face up and you will face the gimbal forward, wherein you can create these trippy types of movement, although a bit gimmicky in my opinion, but at least it's there if you need it. Now you can toggle between the different modes by double clicking this M or mode button on the left side of the screen. Now that is true for PF, TF, FPV, and lock. If you want to go into inception mode, you have to triple click the mode button like this. Now to the left of the mode button, you've got this joystick where you can control the motors or the gimbal itself instead of using the handle to point at different directions. And you also have this trigger button in front, wherein if you double click the trigger button, it will center your gimbal again in the the default position. If you triple click this trigger button, it will go into selfie mode. And if you double click it again, it will go back to the default position. Now, when you hold the trigger button of the gimbal, it will go into lock mode. So there are actually 2 ways you can go into lock mode: toggle through the M button or hold the trigger button in front. Now, one thing that I don't like about the trigger system of the Aircross S is I think you can customize this trigger button. So for example, if you hold this, it goes into lock mode. Now, back when I was using my Weebill S, I programmed this to be in the equivalent of a TF or the tilt follow of this Aircross S. I can't figure out how to do that here, or maybe you just can't do it. So if you know how to do it, please comment down below, because I can't figure it out and I want to program this to TF instead of lock. Also, the double tap of the trigger button, which is, it goes back to the default setting. In the Weebill S, if you are in selfie mode like this and you double click this trigger button, it centers the frame or goes into default position, but facing the selfie mode direction. But here, if you are in selfie mode and double tap the trigger button, it goes back to the front. So if I want, just to center again the gimbal, but I still want it to be facing me, I need to double click, it will face front, and then triple click for it to go back to selfie mode. So, some things that I don't like about how the functionality of the Aircross S. Now to the right side of the gimbal, you have the USB-C port for charging purposes and this power button, wherein if you press and hold, then the gimbal powers off or on if it's turned off already. But if you just tap the button, then it will go into sleep mode. Now, when it's in sleep mode, the motors are not engaged. So I just put it on sleep mode right now. As you can see, the motors are not turned on. So this is some kind of a battery saving mode, because Yes, the motors are not engaged, but it is not completely shut off, so that if you suddenly need your gimbal, then you just tap it and it goes back on. It's quicker than turning on your gimbal in a turned off state. Now, for those of you who have the exact same setup as I do, I have an A7S III and a Tamron 20-40. I could actually go into underslung mode with this setup, but you have to take out the eyepiece of the camera. And once that's taken out, then you could actually go underslung mode without any problem. And again, no shake, I don't feel any vibrations. The gimbal can handle it very, very well. Now, as I've shared with you at the start, me buying a gimbal is just mainly for my YouTube channel, mainly for stabilizing like walking footage. So I did a test of this exact setup yesterday. I just walked around the house and this is how the footage looks like. All right, vlogging test of this setup, which is the Moza Aircross S with my Sony A7S III and the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8. I am walking around the house just to show you what kind of footage, stabilized footage, you can get with this setup. And what's amazing is it's not heavy at all. I mean, there are a lot of gimbals that came out the past years and who were touted as travel gimbals, but I think this size is the perfect travel gimbal. For me, it's surprising that this gimbal, this small gimbal could support a full frame camera with a zoom lens. Although this is not one of the biggest zoom lens, but still, it's still a zoom lens. It's not a prime lens. And yeah, the width is enough for vlogging, and the footage is smooth, and I don't feel any vibrations from the gimbal itself. You really feel that it can handle this kind of setup. Sony A7S III and a Tamron 20-40. So let me just get my phone to show you how I'm holding this setup. All right, so this is how I am holding it. I hope you can see it. So my elbows are even clipped, and I walked around like this earlier. It's not even extended like this. If it's extended like this, then this is what you see on the frame, but nope, I've just clipped my hands here. I think this is wide enough for vlogging. And yeah, this is a very, very comfortable setup if you are a travel vlogger using a gimbal. Now let's talk about what comes in the box when you purchase the Moza Aircross S. If you want to see the unboxing video, please go to my Instagram account at Nico Volante to watch that video. Now, out of the box, you will get this carrying case. Yes, it comes with a bag, and inside the bag, you will get, of course, the gimbal itself, an Arca-Swiss plate, this multi-angle L bracket type of mount, cables to charge the gimbal and to connect your gimbal with your camera, and a tripod. Now, one cool thing about this gimbal is its multi-orientation mounting style here in the Aircross S. Now, as you can see, my setup is set for a horizontal type shooting, but you could quickly change this setup to a vertical setup by just removing it from the side of the gimbal because of this L bracket type of mount. Show you, take out the gimbal right here, put your camera in the vertical mode, and just slide this in this mount, and then tighten it again here. And there you go. You now have a vertical setup in your gimbal. So that is something very, very useful for content creators today because of the era of the short form vertical video. So there, as you can see, the footage is very stabilized. I didn't feel at all that the Aircross S was having a hard time with this full frame setup. So I highly recommend this product even if you are using a full frame setup for your vlogging or for, simple video work. Now, for professional work, please do not buy this, as you might have the need to change to bigger lenses, and I don't dare use, like a Sigma 24 to 70 lens with this setup. So it's just for this, relatively compact full frame setup. Now, talking about the price, I don't have an SRP yet here in the Philippines, but in the US, this retails at $259 US, which I think is very, very reasonable and very, very budget friendly for the power that it gives you, during operation. So there you go. Those are my thoughts about this Aircross S. Thank you again to Altitude Digital and Moza Philippines for letting me test out this gimbal, and I am going to most likely buy this gimbal for my YouTube videos. Now, if you like videos like this, reviews, tutorials, all other gear related stuff, please watch my other videos here. So you can tap this. Tap. Come on, let's go. Tap it.